I wanted to go on here and talk about how we adopted our 3 kids. We're in the process of adopting our 3rd right now from the foster system. And I wanted to talk about what it's really like. So just to back up a little bit, my husband and I, before we had kids, we were actually going the traditional way to get pregnant. However, when we realized that one of our closest friends had a son that we thought was biological, and they happened to adopt him from the foster system as an infant, Gil and I decided we were going to try that route. And so we did. And I also wanted to talk about our son, Evan. Evan has autism. And one question that probably will pop up now, because I never really disclosed how we got him, because it didn't matter. I mean, we love him as if he popped out of my belly. That's how we love him. And we will never, ever give him up, no matter what. He is ours forever. When we made the commitment to adopt him, in fact, when we made the commitment to foster him, we were all in. And I know that's not always the case with a lot of foster families. Some families aren't sure if they want to adopt, and that's fine. But for Gil and I, we only went into the foster system because we wanted to be the parents that would be there for any child that needed a family. We weren't going to try to rip away children from biological parents that were fighting so hard to clean up their act so that they can get them back. We didn't want to do any of that. In fact, we were just there, ready and waiting for whoever was going to show up that needed parents. And who showed up for us was Evan. And so we got an email from a social worker with Evan's information. She said Evan is developmentally delayed. They're not sure if he has autism or not. They're not even sure if he has any potential, any hope of talking or having any kind of a normal life. As soon as we got that email, Gil and I said, okay, he's ours, without knowing anything about who he was. I always say that it was a calling to adopt Evan, but I believe it was more than that. A calling occurs in your heart. And when we got that email saying that Evan was available for a potential adoption, our hearts just blew open. And we're like, he's ours. I mean, I don't know what it's like to give birth to a child and then find out that the child has a diagnosis. But I would imagine that if you give birth to a child and you start raising that child and then you find out that he has a diagnosis, you don't give him up. You just do what you can because you're committed for life. And that's literally how we saw Evan. I can't explain it, but I truly believe that you're either put on this earth to have that kind of commitment or you're not. You can't pick and choose. If you're trying to pick and choose, then you're deciding by ego. You're not deciding from your heart. And so when we got matched with Evan, when we got that email, before even looking at his file, and his file was this thick, full of papers of diagnosis and psychological reports and behavioral reports, his file was pretty thick. Before we went through the paperwork, we said yes. And then the social worker was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? And you want to talk about it? You want to talk to his doctors? And we said, no, we'll talk after. We'll figure it all out along the way. And we did. He came and lived with us. And just like any other situation where you're learning about a new diagnosis, we had issues. He would bang his head. He would not comply with anything. He was like a little wild puppy that was running around, biting, scratching, banging his head, doing all sorts of things. And nobody knew how to handle him, not even his biological family at the time. We were in touch with them. And none of the social workers knew anything about that severity of autism. But we learned, and we took courses, and we talked to professionals and behavioral therapists. And the thing about adopting from the foster system is foster children get priority over governmental services. And so we were able to get Evan into these behavioral services simply because there was no wait list for him. Those services helped a lot, but we also did a lot of like alternative therapies, and we even, did private therapies and, paid out of pocket for a lot of things to get Evan where he is today. And I think one thing that helped us deal with Evan's behaviors when he was younger is that we always had the mindset that Evan could do anything. We always approached Evan with a mindset that he was capable no matter what. And we pushed him and he didn't like it. But then when he succeeded with something, he was so happy. And so we continued to push him. So There are some things about the adoption that were difficult. As soon as Evan moved in with us, we dove right in, and we learned as much as we could about autism. We reached out to our network. Luckily, we have a good friend who owns a facility that caters to special needs and autistic people, and so we got his support. There were things that were difficult for me. Evan was our priority, but then, of course, there's this other side of me that started to question whether or not I would have a normal life. And we said yes to adopting Evan, despite my fears of my freedom being lost. And so I already had this fear that maybe part of my freedom would be taken away. So I had that. And then when we said yes to Evan, I followed my heart when I said yes. But then my brain kicked in and my ego kicked in. It was like, how are you going to snowboard again? You've always wanted to go to Europe. How are you going to do that with a severely autistic kid that nobody knows how to handle? And so going to our friend who owns the special needs center and asking him these very obvious questions, like, how am I going to take care of him and have any kind of a normal life? If you set your mind to anything, you can find a solution. So it was as simple as, I'm such a passionate snowboarder. I used to go to the mountain every weekend to snowboard. I just love, it was my happy place. And to imagine myself not being able to do that once we had a child, like I couldn't imagine that. And then I thought, once we do have a child, if, we would bring a babysitter or something. But then now we have this special needs, severely autistic child that bites and scratches people, and he couldn't even get accepted into any daycares because daycares always told us that if he bites, he was 3 years old at the time, if he bites, we won't take him. Anyway, turns out there is a special needs center in the mountain that we always go to, and we were able to book him some classes there, and so we were able to go snowboarding, and he was put into this class where he was able to ski and snowboard as well. Trauma doesn't disappear simply because you offer love. I have to say that meeting a lot of potential foster parents, that sometimes is the myth that some foster parents have, that, oh, all I need to do is offer this child love. And that is the wrong way to approach adoption. And because I had mentioned earlier that we saw a family with their son thriving, and we realized he was adopted from the foster system, we wanted to go that route anyway. And I had mentioned before that they pay you. Well, I want to just also have a disclaimer that they don't pay you that much. So to be a foster parent, it has to be a calling that goes beyond the finances. So you can't just do it for money. And my husband and I did it because we wanted to create a family, and it didn't matter how much money we were getting from the foster system, because whatever child we invited to our home, we were acting as if this was going to be our child. And once the child's reunification rights were terminated, then we were 100% all in to adopt our child, no matter what showed up. So a lot of families aren't sure if they want to adopt a child because they don't know how they're going to behave, or they don't know if there's any hidden diagnosis or anything. And I really think that if you want to adopt from the foster system, you have to be all in. It's kind of like pregnant or not. Like when a woman is pregnant, she's all in. She's pregnant. She's going to bring the baby to term and give it birth and then take care of it for for 18 years or so. You have to be all in with foster to adopt. Otherwise, it's not going to work either. I know way too many families that, over the years, that say they want to adopt, and then they adopt, and then they don't like the behaviors of a child, and they give him up or they rehome him. I'm sure, there's that controversy of, I forget their name, there's that couple that had all these kids and they have 2 million views, and they adopted a child from China and found out he had autism, and at 4 years old they rehomed him, which on the flip side, I'm sure it was more beneficial to the child because hopefully he found a family that could better take care of him. I want to talk about the expectations of adopting from the foster system. You can't go in blindsided that you can just give the child love and that the child will be okay, because that child will have come with traumas. There's a reason why that child was in the foster system. Like I said earlier, your commitment to being a parent has to be greater than the type of child you receive. If you decide to adopt from the foster system, even if on the surface that child looks perfect, there are behaviors, there are traumas that are hidden. And no matter what they are, and of course, one size does not fit all. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Oh my God. There's lots of runners. There's about a lot of runners that are about to pass. I'm driving home from the gym. Okay. All right, no more runners. Okay. So, yeah, you have to be 100% committed first to being a parent. And then, secondly, you have to be 100% committed to whatever child shows up for you. And that's who we were for Evan. That's who we are for all our children. I also want to talk about reunification. Well, the Department of Children and Family Services, at least in Los Angeles, now have a different department that just caters to parents that just want to adopt. They don't want to foster. But before, when Evan was adopted by us, they didn't have that separate group. So we had to first commit to reunifying whatever child ended up in our home with their biological family, because that is the number one priority of the foster system, is that you house a child so that the parents can clean up their act, and then the child can go back into their home. You are committed as a foster parent. You sign a clause basically saying that you are supportive of not just the child, but also of the family that is trying to get the child back. And for us, we had to bite our tongue, and we had to put our own needs and our own selfish, frustrations of not being able to create a family right away. We had to put all of that aside. Evan's biological parents clearly loved him, but they just didn't have the means to care for him properly. He had severe special needs. He needed a special diet. He needed therapies, and it required so much rigor to get Evan into a place where he was regulated and thriving. I'll be honest, not everybody could and would want to take care of someone like Evan. His autism at 3 years old was pretty difficult to handle. Reunification is the number one priority in the foster system. But I want to say, and this might be a controversial thing to say, reunification is not always the best thing in the foster system. That is why there is a possibility of adoption within the foster system. It's when all other solutions have been exhausted in getting that child back home to their families, and that's when adoption is available. It's when no family member can take the child. Parents are just not unable to take the child for whatever reason. There's so many different reasons. It's drugs, it's incarceration, it's death, it's so many different things. And no one size fits all. Everything has to be assessed heavily. There was one time that Evan's biological grandma, who was very supportive of us adopting him, and who always used to say, "Can you adopt me too as a grandma? I could be your grandma too." And it was such an amazing relationship that we had with her. She had passed. There was one time, maybe about 2 weeks after we had met Evan for the first time, and Grandma and Evan came over to our house because we were going to have a visitation with him. And Evan went straight for this Buddha that we've had for years, that I forget where we bought it, but we just loved this wooden Buddha. It was about this big, and it was such a beautiful piece, wooden. He went straight for the Buddha, grabbed it, and threw it across the room, and it smashed up into a million pieces. And Grandma looked horrified, and Evan was just like laughing and giggling and being his cute autistic self. And Grandma looks at me, and she says, "Do you still like us?" And I remember, like it was the cute, and then she's like, "I'll pay for it." I'm like, "No, don't." So it's things like that, I could have very well said, "Oh my gosh, like what a crazy kid, I don't want him." But no, that's part of being a parent. Part of being a parent means they have things broken. You're going to have things be broken. There's a kid in the house. Of course, nothing's going to be perfect. So I give that example because it's a real example about how we have to set the right expectation for ourselves when we're adopting. We adopted a very, very high needs child, but there are other children that look so neurotypical and they might be excelling in school, or their behavior might be great, but they come into your home and the opposite might happen. You just don't know. They're in the foster system. There's trauma, there's hidden traumas, and you have to expect unexpected. And if the unexpected never happens, you're lucky. But if the unexpected happens, you deal with it because you made a commitment that's way beyond the perfect life setting that you created for yourself. I believe the key to having the life of your dreams is literally accepting what you don't like, and it's creating what you can. And we can create most of what we can, including our mindset of how things occur in our lives. So when Evan was presented to us, we already had the mindset that we were going to have a child, and we saw him as a gift from God. You don't refuse gifts from God. And so Were we a capable family to deal with autism? At the time, no, we weren't. But we made ourselves capable of dealing with autism because all of a sudden there was this boy that needed us. And so we made him our priority. And we don't think that we're heroes. I feel like he chose us and we chose him. But I think it even goes beyond that. I think that we just chose commitment. And I believe that commitment can get you anywhere. Like if you're committed to a job, you'll excel in a job. If you're committed to raising a puppy, you'll excel in that. They have this thing in the foster system where you can do a 14-day notice, meaning if you decide to adopt a child and they move into your home, if you don't like something about the child, you can call your social worker and say, hey, I want to give a 14-day notice. And they will rehome the child and you no longer have to adopt them. And I believe it might go both ways for a child too, if a child doesn't want to be adopted, if they're old enough to make that decision. I'm not sure. But people take advantage of that all the time. There's a lot of foster families that take in a child and they can't handle the behavior or they don't like the behavior or I don't know, whatever reason. You can't rehome a biological child that way. And I truly believe that if you want to adopt from the foster system, you have to act as if the child that gets placed with you is biological. You have to act as if that child's going to be with you forever. And you're going to deal with any issues that arise, because there will be issues that arise. We just don't know what they're going to be. There's so many stories about foster families that home a child and then something pops up. And then you deal with it on a case-by-case basis. If you're willing, if you're scared, if you're curious, don't wait too long. There is never a perfect time for anything. We just gotta live life and go for it. We don't know if we have tomorrow. We don't even know if we have today. And I'm so glad I didn't wait any longer. We weren't prepared. We just decided to dive all in and do it. And we did. Please subscribe to our channel. We are a family of 5 with 3 adopted kids. 2 of our sons have autism. We love to travel. We homeschool 2 of our kids. We would love to hear from all of you and create a community around our lifestyle. Thank you. Bye.